Join us as we unravel our deep-rooted relationship with money, from earliest memories to eureka moments and building wealth. Birth to Net Worth, with me, Tristan Trenberth.
Welcome to another episode of Birth to Net Worth. Today we got a really special guest, Sarah. I've met her through a couple of other friends. Susan, that was on the last episode, is connected with her, and she's also connected with Bethany, that was on a few weeks ago. Incredible human being. She doesn't live in the United States, but some people are military brats, children of military personnel. This young lady is actually a daughter of a real estate veteran and was raised in the business. So let me welcome Sarah Miskelly. Sarah, welcome. Where do you join us from today?
So I am in Costa Rica, hence the trees and the sunshine right now. Yeah.
Wonderful. So you mentioned a little bit about your background. Your dad was in real estate. Tell me what you did with your dad to learn to get to where you are today with founding a capital company.
Yeah. Well, I was very blessed to grow up with it around me, right? You kind of don't realize how much you know when you kind of just have it naturally as part of your life. So, I helped my dad when I was a kid manage his properties. He had multifamily in Toronto. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada. So I had to, clean units, mow the grass, paint, hammer nails, all that stuff as a kid, do the books. So it really taught me young the value of hard work, firstly, and then secondly, just the inner workings of property management and, acquiring assets and such. So that was a huge help for me in knowing what I wanted to do, as I grew up a little bit. And just also knowing, the challenges that come up in that sector as well.
Fantastic. So let's get down to business. I know you got a daylight, a beautiful golden
daylight clock. Yeah.
So Sarah, tell us about your first memory with money.
Yeah. So I remember, when I was a kid, I think, well, maybe I'm showing things that not every kid does, but, sneaking $20 bills from my mom's wallet to go to like Walmart, you know what I mean? I remember that. And, I think what was really interesting is when you have two parents, it's kind of like Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Like my dad and my mom handled money very differently. And they also had different ambitions around money. So I felt like I had a very interesting like juxtaposition between entrepreneurship and how that can increase your money, and then also being more stringent and maybe keeping money closer, like not wanting to spend as much, being spendthrift. And it was interesting because I started to see how people's backgrounds, how much that dictates essentially how we are with money. So that would be one of my earliest memories. I don't know what it means, but that's the one that came to mind.
Brilliant. That's exactly like what we identify very often. Sometimes parents are on the same page. Sometimes there's a big variance. So where did you find your relationship to money between being very thrifty and very entrepreneurial in those initial very young years?
I think the biggest thing is I've had the ambition of an entrepreneur, but I like to keep expenses low. So I'm not a big shopper. Like I like to always make sure that I'm, looking at my tech stack and, eliminating things that are unnecessary. And when I was running my real estate business, so I was in real estate sales for years as well. My real estate coach was always like, you run a very lean business. It's just because that's that thriftiness that came through. But I also had my father's ambition. He's like, let's grow a business, let's be an entrepreneur. So I think that both are extremely valuable. I truly don't think that one is better than the other. Everybody comes and approaches money, as you know, based on their experiences. So I can't make them wrong for it, right? But I think it's being valuable and just appreciating it and, not falling out too much. Although I do enjoy a nice bottle of wine.
Yeah, and we all. So your dad, you mentioned to me before, your dad put you to work. Was that something that you were paid for? Is that something you just contributed to the family business? And, how did that come about?
Yeah. So I was very young. Like I'm talking like as a kid, like, like I was just, whenever I went to my dad's house, I knew I wasn't allowed to watch TV. Like I had to do what he was doing. I had to just be his buddy and, go to Home Depot. I spent a lot of time at Home Depot. So that was kind of just our relationship. I was a worker and I hated it. But it served me very well when I got into my career, and just like 10x it when I got into real estate sales and everything I pursued after. So I think work ethic, I'm a big believer now. Let's
Yeah.
just say.
Yeah. Fantastic. So getting into sort of high school, were you a big student thinking about college? Did you go to college after high school? Tell me about that part of your life and where you had a bit more independence, maybe financially and socially. Um, Sounds like you're balancing this, your mum and dad's perspective was money. Tell me about that experience and how, do you have any mistakes? Do you have any failures that you can learn from and share with us that really struck home, or observations of others with their use of money that either shocked you or impressed you?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think, high school was challenging because my dad actually passed away when I was 16. So I had to take over his real estate portfolio, and manage it and deal with everything. And that was very hard, just
Yeah.
to be honest. And then when I got into high school, I felt a little bit lost. I think, my father was such a big figure in my life. So not having him, I was not a stellar student in high school. I was a pothead. Like I was just doing whatever. But I think, from there, it's good to recognize that like we all kind of go through ups and downs in life, and it's not, you're not a failure because of that up and down. It's just you had a failure in an experience, right? So I think when I look at how I kind of handled money and, my experiences throughout high school and stuff, I would say that, there's nothing like notable in that regard. But I definitely, after I got out of that kind of season of not knowing what's next, I doubled down on the things that I knew that worked, which was work really hard and build a business and work on building wealth. I think that was a big thing that I wanted to pass on because my dad had left me with a portfolio, and it made a big difference for me to learn that and be able to leverage that portfolio to then, pay for my university or have a roof over my head when I was in school. So I was very lucky in that sense.
That's amazing. I mean, it's never good to lose a family member, but what a gift in planning your legacy and your future from that day that you knew, even if it wasn't an obvious thing, that was already set up for you. That's a natural progression. They say that we can change, the Rockefellers said, give me a generation, I'll change the way America thinks. And it's the same way in financial education and other areas in life. We can change that by one generation making that change. Like even just something similar, like setting up a living trust where there's conveyance of property, assets between generations. Nobody will remember when there was that terrible probate situation. I've done a lot of probate, situations with sellers. When there's no trust set up and probate's involved, it's so much more discomfort. So having simple things like that, and we'll get on to, other ways that we build and maintain wealth later on. But just having some of these things when they're gifted to you at that age, it just helps you see life differently from such an early day. I mean, so many people say, I wish I'd read Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was
Oh, yeah.
old instead of,
My dad made me read it when I was like 8. Like I'm telling you, he was like, I was being set up, and I appreciate it now. You know what I mean? Like it's like when kids are so young, we were chatting a little bit about this before, talking about your personal development work and stuff. And it's like, you don't really know the impact of that, even if the child seems somewhat disinterested. There's some things they're getting through. I met Robert Kiyosaki, I think a couple of months ago at Limitless, like this like financial freedom expo. And I was like, wow, like this is so full circle. And this man is getting surrounded by all these people who are like, you are like the OG. Like it was like meeting a superstar, and the incredible influence on people's mindset just from that book is like, hats off to him.
it sounds like we're in exactly the same room the same day.
Yeah, probably.
100%. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll see you next time. I do want to go back. It was one of my favorite conferences. So
Yeah. Ken always puts on a really good event. It's very, very good. So yeah, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I mean, let's talk about that a minute. I mean, at the age of 8, I can't imagine understanding what an asset and liability was at that age, or really the concept. But having your dad's business around you, there was some context around the learning material. How many people have you come across percentage-wise that have been positively impacted that really kickstarted their understanding? It was my first experience of, wow, I need to understand this real estate business.
I mean, people call it like the Bible of almost like real estate investing
Yeah.
and stuff. Like it is always that most sought after book and cited book. I think now with the internet and stuff like that, you're starting to see more platforms come out, like Bigger Pockets and things like that, that are speaking more about this type of stuff. And then the internet, right? Like
Yeah.
now we have LinkedIn and, all these different people sharing their stories about, how they've transformed their lives, including myself through real estate investing. But I think that that is still probably the most cited piece of literature on it.
Yeah. There's a lot of content out there, but I think it puts it in a way which is very understandable and relatable. You know, some say it's a story, some say it's, gospel truth. I think everything comes with a little bit of elaboration to help the story come along. And there's another book that I read recently called Cash Flow Breakfast Club.
Okay.
It's a different twist on the same kind of concept. It doesn't so much focus on two different stories. It's bringing it all together. And there's actually a movement. I think it came out about 2 years ago. And there's actually a club in different cities. And the irony of the club is that the breakfast club is in the evening. And
Oh,
then
so cool.
once you get to the end of the book, they graduate the breakfast club, then they go to the dinner club, which is at 7 o'clock. Ironically, it is in Hawaii, which is where Kiyosaki's from, but it looks at an agent who for 7 years was getting into the business of agency. And he signed, once he got his first deal signed, then he got, offers from other brokerages to go to them. And it was a signing bonus, he thought, but it was an advance on commissions. And he just got stuck in this cycle for like 7 or 8 years. But his sister, who was a teacher, she had built up over the last 5 years enough properties to almost retire and meet a freedom number. So I think that's very relatable because it relates to people that are like a teacher and other things where they kind of put it together. But it is great to come across these types of books. But I think some often go into a bit too much detail too quickly, and it's not ready for the early mind in the business. But, Kiyosaki did it so well, and this book does it well too. So
That's awesome.
So college, did you do college?
Yeah, so I went to university in Toronto. I think I just did a standard. I don't even remember. It feels so long ago. But I just did like a BA, honors, kind of liberal arts, communication, social sciences. I didn't really use it. I mean, once again, I'm probably using it more than I realize.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'm like, I should have just gone into real estate sales sooner. But that's, hindsight 2020. I just found it a little bit boring. Like, we had a lot of time off. I don't know why. I was like, why do you have so much time off?
Because I mean, it's funny. I said to my kids, if you go to college, I want you to take at least a year off first, so that you go and find yourself. You travel the world and find out what you're passionate about. I'm happy for you to go to college, but at least do something you're really passionate about that's going to be meaningful to you or the world. So I went to hotel management school, culinary school. I was in the business for a little bit, but going through IT for 20 odd years and then finding Kiyosaki. So it's been useful, but what I didn't realize from the catering and the hotel management side of things, I was already learning problem solving, relationships, managing frustrations, managing complaints, that type of thing, objection over, handling. And really, I didn't realize that I was picking up mirroring naturally back trained in it, but I picked that up and I now look back and I think I was doing those things then, and now I'm transferring those skills. So one of the things that I always ask new investors is, what have you done to this point in life? Because there's always skills that they can transfer into this business without just starting wholesaling and putting all of the hats on. Where can we fit you in to the business that you can leverage the skills that you already earn and put them into a place where it's relatable to the new context that you're using them? And you can start at a higher level instead of starting always on the very base level. So brilliant. Did you have any siblings, or do you have any siblings?
No, I'm an only child, a lonely child.
Yeah.
So I was all just, that's one thing. I have 2 little kids now. And one of my big things is I wanted to have more than one child because it is different when you're an only child. And it's funny because it was kind of normal. Grew up in Toronto, like had a lot of friends. A lot of friends had single parents that I grew up around, and a lot of them were single kids. But now that we're in Costa Rica, now that my husband is Filipino, so he has this massive family. And here, it's like if you have one kid, it's like weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just not normal. So it's very interesting to see how it's different in different places.
Yeah. So that really was you taking that on entirely yourself, your dad's portfolio, the business.
Yeah.
How have you worked that now? Do you still own some of the properties or all the properties that you inherited, or have you've diversified since? How has that changed since that time?
Yeah, so I think I really always believe in like buy and hold as a strategy. And, if I have cash flowing assets, I'm not going to sell them like unless I have to. So I ended up keeping the portfolio, leveraged some of the equity once interest rates were low, and was able to put that into some other deal opportunities like private lending and syndications, which is what I bring investors into now. So I'm 34 now, but I've been doing this stuff since I was like 18 or 20. And it's really been a great way to kind of use what I have and like enhance it, and then also learn new skill sets in the world of real estate. So, taking that initial property management skill set, then, elevating it up to like real estate sales, and then into, multifamily syndication and private lending. And now in Costa Rica, I'm now in development, developing communities and things like that. So those stepping stones are, like you said, you kind of take one skill and then you don't even see how you're going to apply it next, but the opportunity's there.
Yeah, yeah. So let's step back a little bit with friends you had at college and school. How different were other people's perspectives? Was that something you were aware of, that there was scarcity out there, abundance? It sounded like you come from a reasonably abundant mindset with an investment mindset around money instead of a scarcist kind of hold on to it and not let go. What did you notice around you, and what sort of struck you about what you noticed through high school and college? Because there's so many different diverse backgrounds and demographics. What were you aware of, and how that you were different in that sense?
Yeah, I think like naturally just very ambitious. So I was always looking for more. I didn't really know why. But I'm always looking to do more, be more, excel. Very curious. So I found that as I started to get older, I kind of grew apart from many of my friendships from when I was younger, like from my party days, or, whatever, high school life. And then I got really more interested in like personal development, like we were mentioning before the interview, like landwork, and really getting into that world of people that are up to something or want to improve themselves or like make a difference in the world. So I think that I was always trying to find people that were in bigger conversations, if that makes sense. And so there was a lot of times where it's a lonely journey until you find that new group that really resonates with you. But I've continued to pursue that and put myself into rooms and situations that may be perceived as uncomfortable. Like, for example, U.S. multifamily. If you go into that space, it's like all old white men. To be honest, there's not a lot of young women in there. But you got to go in and like, who cares? Like, I just don't care. You know what I mean? I just am willing to like put myself out there. Um, and I don't know where that comes from, but it's just kind of natural.
That's brilliant. There's confidence there. There's so many things, and I'm feeling that that's something that came from your dad as well. I think he was probably quite an outgoing individual, very well connected, and my dad was as well. I mean, you look around you, and you very often, without realizing, imitate or emulate those around you because you're comfortable in those situations, and it doesn't matter to you as a woman. There's a big difference, but to me, going into something that's talking to people I don't know in general isn't a problem for me. I'll talk to anybody, and I think it's a great skill. And absolutely, I'm really trying to put more of a focus on having women on this season, and just in general having an imbalance potentially positively towards women, because there is so much opportunity out there, and I would love to see more women. The power of women, the energy, the way that women look at things is so different, and it needs to be different. If nothing changes, nothing changes. And with that warm, energetic, feminine side, I think there's so much opportunity for growth, greater prosperity, and greater reciprocity in the world.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, 100%.
I mean,
Yeah, I'll add to that too, because there's like the it actually just shows in the data too, right? There's just a massive wealth transfer coming. Like, look, I'm an example of that. I was a young woman. I lost my dad young, but you have a lot of baby boomers that are dying off right now, and you have a lot of women that are now accelerating their careers. They're making good money. They're also raising families, and figured out a lot of skill sets now.
Yeah.
And now the next one, this missing component right now is there's just an underrepresentation of women investing. But we're really starting to see platforms come out that are specifically targeted to women, like Elvest. Me, I love bringing females into multifamily syndication and making that safe space. But I really think that we're going to see a big shift over the next 10 years. And I mean, in the US, for example, all of the top news channels are now headed by women. So we all know how powerful media is. So
Yeah.
the messaging, you're going to watch, like just watch the messaging change over the next 10 years, and to be more inclusive, but also bringing in, as you said, like more of a feminine perspective that actually will just bring us all up. Like I don't have any of this like you versus me. It's like, let's just
Yeah.
all elevate together.
I mean, I think I think there's toxic masculinity and there's toxic femininity in this world, and it's just those extremes. And I think where governments, where other things, not to get political, is trying to be divisive, whether it's role based, whether it's politically based, it's trying to drive people apart. But it's reconnecting us and bringing us together, which is always going to create a better, more conscious, more clear outcome with benefits for everybody involved. Once we get together, it's always that middle ground, whether it's politics, religion, otherwise, the people that are willing to talk to each other and understand each other's position. It's really kind of awareness and curiosity. What is your position? I don't have to agree with it, but I can respect you have a strong opinion or a perspective or a preference. And, we can talk about how we can see the common ground instead of seeing the division. The more we can talk about seeing the common ground, the more the extremes are less impactful on us, because we're now united. We're now seeing shining the flashlight in the same direction instead of in each other's eyes, which is what's so. Tell me about HYLEE Capital. How did that come about through, your early to mid 20s, where you're really picking up speed with your real estate sales? How did the capital come around? Is it fundraising as far as private lending in the beginning? Did it always start out in syndications? Tell me some about that.
Yeah, so I mean, like I was naturally just doing this myself. Like I was placing my capital, I was acting as a bank essentially for other people. And then I was getting into the syndication model, which, if anybody doesn't know that's listening, that's where a bunch of people, put money in together to buy a bigger property, right? So you're getting a slice of a bigger pie. And a lot of those investors are passive investors, so they don't have to deal with anything really. They just have to do a lot of due diligence up front to make sure that the people that are doing stuff are good people or know what they're doing, let's just say. So because I was doing it so much and I kind of had this, after having kids and getting out of, my sales career, which was like a 7-day a week job, and I was making a ton of money, but I was just burnt out. And I didn't want to do that when I had kids. I was like, look, what am I already doing that's workable? And that was passive investing. I just saw how much it was providing for me with cash flow. So I really wanted to take that knowledge and what I was already gaining and get other people involved and share about it. And so that's where I created HYLEE Capital. And what we do is we bring investment partners on to these large multifamily assets, but a lot of it is not transactional. I really want to educate people, specifically women. I really put, an outreach to women. Like I have clients that are both men and women, but just trying to encourage them to get involved, because some of these spaces have been like an old boys club in commercial real estate for so long. And it's like, it doesn't have to be, it's really not that complex. There's just a lot of jargon. There's only a few things you really, really need to understand and know. And I really want to make that kind of inclusive space so that women can get more invested and get some passive income. Because I know, like, when I wanted to take time off with my kids, if I was a realtor and I was like, you had mentioned that kind of churn and burn, do a deal commission, and not actually invest. If I took time off, there's no money being made. There's also
Pipeline.
no like healthcare. Yeah, you have no pipeline. So as a woman, you're like, oh, well, I can't take time off, or I need to take a very limited amount of time off. But I was blessed to not have to do that. And I could spend as much time as I want. And I continue to do that with my kids simply because I have real estate that's covering expenses, and that's bringing in cash flow. And so I'm just very passionate about educating other people about this, because it's been around for 50 years. Syndications is not a new model. It's not like some weird, like back alley, hand me your cash. It's like, no, this is like a SEC regulated, review it with your lawyers, like get your financial advisors involved, but let's get you educated so that you can learn about alternative assets that honestly generally don't get access to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Birth to Net Worth is going to be putting together some education in the next few months to talk about how we can get middle-aged to millionaire path for retirement, because most people are just not aware that the average 401k is between $400,000 and $500,000 at best for an American at retirement age. And if they're not got $3.5, $4, $5 million in retirement planning, then they're going to be back to work very quickly or not drawing on that money. So we're putting together options to be able to educate the young and also educate the middle-aged that realize the American dream is actually an American nightmare unless they are setting themselves up for stopping the instant gratification, spending more than they should do, and also understanding really how this works. I mean, this is why I'm looking to bring experts in like Greg Hurleen, PCS to look at asset protection, those sort of things. How can we get 401ks converted to self-directed products? How can I provide whole life policies to people to actually, whether they choose to pay the tax and not self-directed, but put into a whole life policy that could be insuring their kids so they can get a lower premium, invest that living benefit themselves in projects like you're doing. And also whether we want to do some impact investing as well, where we support teenage mental health, homelessness. I've got a model that I'm working with Bethany that we can apply to any nonprofit that would give more benefits to those investors, and we could even look at lowering the bar so they don't have to be accredited investors, so that people can put smaller amounts of money in, but it does return to them over time, and it's going to create some amazing impact in society.
Yeah, that's incredible, and I'm seeing so much more of it, and it's so encouraging. As people get richer, I think there's certain people that are doing it in a way where they want to just give back, right?
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
And I think so many people, Matthew talks about, what our goals are. I'd love to have an Aston Martin, but it's not probably the best time for me to go and buy one right now. But I could go and rent one twice a year and have the experience of driving the Aston Martin a couple of times a year without the full expense. In the same way, we can have the experience of being an investor without necessarily having, millions of dollars to put to use, which most people think is the case. It's really education and making more available these things. And on the side of giving, we can give time if we don't have money, but we can also give a very small amount of money in the sense that we can just compound that over time because it's just giving a small amount. Profit First is a great book for financial literacy for business owners. And Mike Michalowicz also did a book called My Money Bunnies, which you might want to look at for your kids. I don't know if you come across that one.
No, I've read Profit First, but I didn't know about the My Money Bunnies. So when they're reading age, I'll definitely
it's the real
check it out.
But it's just got 3 jars. Today money, someday money, and one day money. One day money, I think it's called. So they kind of budget their money, but so they got something they can save for long term. Some they want to save medium term, and they got some money they can play around with now. So it just kind of puts into their mind buckets of budgeting. There's another guy, Scott Donnell, and his partner, he was on last year, who's begun a company called Gravy Stack, which is a whole financial platform for kids. I think it was one of the guys that created Amazon Pay. They hired to gamify the banking system for kids where they can have debit cards and that sort of thing to really bring their mind around to, well, where can we cut back on things that we don't need subscriptions for the TV channels or magazines, other different things. It's got a load of missions for them so that they actually get excited and engaged about these things, work with their parents. And he's even got something which is, I think it's every Saturday morning in Phoenix, and they've got a network of these around the country, which is a young entrepreneur organization where kids can go and set up, whether it's a simple lemonade stand or selling, that funny putty or whatever the stuff they call, they can go and sell things and actually learn about cash flow and, cost versus profit, net gross, cost of sale, all of those different things. And it's really bringing new opportunity for adults and kids to work together because, we know most adults aren't financially literate, but also those same adults won't admit that they're not financially literate. But if they need it, if they want to help educating their kids and do something fun, those concepts will sink in with the adults at the same time they're doing it with their kids, and they'll start.
Yeah, there's like the cash flow quadrant game, the Robert Kiyosaki one.
Sure.
And I've heard great things. It's fun. I've never played it, but my husband's played it so much. And I'm like, how have I never played this
Yeah.
game?
It,
But I've
it,
heard it's like incredible.
it was on my shelf for 2 years. Next, right the other side of the wall. I pulled it out the other week for the Cash Flow Breakfast Club. Played it for the first time. Great. But Cash Flow Quadrant was another great follow-up book for.
So good. I almost thought it was better, but I think it's so under talked about. But it was exactly like
I
you
agree.
said. Like sometimes it's going to be that the easiest, most accessible information is going to
Yeah.
become more popular, right? So cash flow quadrant was definitely just like a next step up. That wasn't for everybody, but I think that's why as well. Like you're seeing, and I personally experienced it because I post on LinkedIn a lot just about like lifestyle freedom and investing, and people are very receptive to it now because it's so digestible and it's like so simple and it feels achievable. And I think that that's really the most important part. And you would totally understand that. It's like once you believe you can, that's when the difference is made. So I think more of those stories in I guess popular culture, which I think like social media is pretty popular these days, really encourages people and shows them the accessibility. Of course, like it's obviously more complex than that, but it truly starts there.
Yeah. I think I'm looking at a concept of creating something for the middle age, because there's a lot of rags to riches of kids that immigrate with their parents and have nothing and build to. Carlos Reyes is an amazing example of that. But there's not really a lot that caters to single parents or adults that are partway through life and they haven't got that start yet. They're getting into the business. Cash flow quadrant was great, singling out the self-employed corner where people just get stuck. But for parents and people that are doing things in addition to a day job and looking after kids as well, I think I need to tell my story of how I've come into this with teenage kids straddling COVID and, business and day job and parenting and soccer and all of these other things to get to the point where life's good and where.
Yeah, no, I think people would love to hear about that. Like that is, you've got a good idea right there.
Because how many adults would be, inspired by hearing, wow, there is hope. I didn't need to start when I was 16, 20 years old. There's hope for me at 40 years old, 50 years old. They say most millionaires become millionaires around the age of 47, 48. My birthday's in 3 weeks. So, it's a relatable time in that sense where you set that thing is most millionaires don't happen until mid-40s.
Yeah, for sure.
Together, you got your life figured out and you see life in a very different perspective at that age. So
There's a good saying, like I don't know, I've heard it, like there's nothing 5 years can't change. So that's exactly what you're saying. Like there's always time, once you really apply yourself and as you shared, you have more wisdom and clarity and you know what's important and you're just you just know the direction you want to go. There's probably less chasing shiny objects.
yeah,
When you have more responsibility too, like you can't mess up as much, you know what I mean? But you know how not to, I would presume.
yeah,
Like I don't know, I'm not at your age yet, but I would presume just from how much I've changed from, even the last 3 years and having kids that you have a lot more wisdom
yeah,
about many things, right?
yeah. And then and I think it's good to relate to the kids as well, that the more you get down life, the more general liabilities that you pick up along the way. If you can invest in assets to pay for those things and just free up everything, whether it's house hacking or otherwise. I mean, my eldest is 18 and a half. She wants to move to Tempe with some friends next year. I'm going to see if I can find her a house that she can house hack and manage and earn her sweat equity in the property so that she can have a property that she can split the, tax benefits with me so she doesn't have to pay tax. We got her some tax write-offs this year where she'll be able to claim some tax back instead of paying it. And I just want to build both of my kids into a place where they never have to pay tax. They have to pay tax, but they have offsets for the tax rather, so that they're never in a position of having to pay much. They can pay enough so that it makes sense for, bank loans and credit worthiness, that type of stuff. But to a point where they don't need to have any of those things if they don't want to use those,
Yeah, for sure. It's a good idea.
Yeah. So So I know it's getting dark where you are.
Yeah, it's gonna happen fast too. It's so funny.
Yeah.
We usually go like to the beach to watch sunset, and you'll be on the beach and everybody's watching, and then it's like this fast scramble to get off because it gets dark so fast, and you can't see anything, and I have to like chase my son down the street, and he's just
I
like
forget
running
there's
around.
no street lights everywhere. I went to the UK a few weeks ago and we were in this small village and there was no street lights. It was so dark, but it's so
Oh gosh, yeah, yeah.
what words would you like, or what message would you like to leave? Maybe a bit about your business, what you do. Just some thoughts to sort of wrap up for the episode.
For sure. Well, first, I want to say that, if anybody's listening and they're kind of unsure about getting into pursuing, financial freedom and passive investing, I would want to encourage you, like you were saying, that it is possible and you don't have to feel stopped by being at a certain age or, having amount of time or capital because, if you're creative, you can always find a solution. If you don't have money, you may have time. If you don't have time, like there's always kind of a juxtaposition with that kind of stuff. And to find me, so HYLEECapital.com. I also have a webinar that educates people on multifamily investing. So if you're interested in investing in multifamily real estate as a passive investor, definitely happy to share a little bit more about what that looks like and share some of the opportunities that we have coming down the pipeline over the next few months. And yeah, I just really appreciate you having me on.
You're most welcome. It's been a great pleasure. We're going to drop your links in your bio in the podcast when and we'll show the links at the end just after we finish here. But thank you for spending your time with me, Sarah. I know we've only met through, I think it was LinkedIn a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Thank you for lining this up. It's been really, really great spending time with you, and I look forward to seeing you at Limitless or somewhere else on.
Yes. Yeah, I know for sure now that I know, right? So, I love the work you're doing here. So it's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Bye.
What a great example of financial freedom. Taking your kids to an island, raising them outside of the borders of your home country, and giving them a unique experience of childhood. Follow Sarah. She's active on most social media platforms, always putting out great content. Feel free to reach out to her through there, and we'll see you on the next edition of Birth to Net Worth.